Do you remember the story of the prodigal son? There are two sons in that story. One took his inheritance and the other one stayed back at home. Now the question I have for you, which one of those two do you think is called the good son?
Welcome back to the Morgan Dialogues. We're so happy to be back with you guys today, and today we want to talk about why good kids are dying inside.
Wow.
So just to start us off, what is a good kid, a good child?
That's a very good question. When it comes to good child, even in the story of the prodigal son, we may consider the child that stayed back at home, the one who didn't complain, the one didn't demand the things that he needed, the one that was quiet, probably reserved, the one that didn't spoke their mind. I would consider that one to be the good son.
I think for most of us, because of the parable, we associate what happened to the son that did get his inheritance in terms of him eating, with the pigs and all that stuff.
Yes.
We think he was the bad son, quote unquote. But how does that story end up playing out?
If you notice, with that story, the one who spoke out, said what he wanted to say, and demanded what he wanted to demand, he returned, the father embraced him. But while he was back, his other son, the one that stayed home, the so-called, the so-called good one that we tend to say, what really happened is that while the younger son returned home and the father embraced him back home, that elder son was on the outside.
Yeah.
He didn't return to the house because the father was trying to encourage him to return. What was really happening was that he was saying, Dad, I too wanted those stuff.
Yeah.
Dad, I too wanted to leave. Dad, I too wanted to enjoy my life. And the father was like, whoa, I thought you were the good son.
Yeah, like you've always been with me. Everything I have is yours. But clearly the elder son was upset about this.
This reminds me of a lot of introverts, because we're introverts ourselves. And that's how I remember growing up. Yeah. I had a lot that I wanted to say, but instead I was very seen as the nicer, good and better child because I didn't express myself. So while my other brother may say a lot, may do a lot, may complain a lot, I didn't get that label as being the bad one because I kept it in. But deep down, just like that elder son, I wanted to say so much. So deep down, yes, they saw me as a good child, but at the end of the day, I had a lot of problems and stuff going on inside.
Yeah, so we're using this as an inspiration to talk a bit about why it's important for us to listen to our children and to give them space for their voice. Yes. Because what ends up happening a lot with most of us who are good kids, or we're considered the goody two-shoes, a teacher's pet, all of these labels that you associate with a good child, we're really dying inside. I mean, I can remember plenty of times where I wanted to express myself, but for the sake of not getting the disapproval of adults or being labeled as a rebellious kid or bad kid, or they never close their mouth, I didn't want that. I wanted to always make sure I had the validation of my teachers, my parents, and so on. And deep down, you're actually suffocating who you really are.
And there's a lot that we want to express ourselves. But here's something I want to share, though. I remember when I didn't speak out much, whether at home or at school, I can remember there are times when the avenue wasn't right for me to say what I wanted to say. Meaning, there are times that I remember that there are some teachers, not all definitely, that based on how when I do say something or I see others speak out, I realize that they shut them down.
Yes.
And that to me is one of the problems where I, being this shy, reserved person that I was, I didn't want to speak out because the one time that I may say something, I realize that the reaction that I get or the fact that my parent or my teacher may shut me down, that, hold me back from even speaking out what I really want to say.
Yeah, it makes you wonder how early on a child's ability to express themselves gets trampled over. Because for most of us, I can totally relate to that, because I remember if you asked a question and this question wasn't what the adults were comfortable with, they would just shut you down. Like, you have no business asking something like that, or you should go and think about what children should be thinking about. And I remember, in fact, one time I remember my nephew, he had just randomly came to me one day and he said, Auntie, why does hell exist? Right? And you're looking at this young person and you're just like, why are you asking that? And but because I knew that I wanted to cultivate that openness, that sense of you can come and ask me anything. I didn't shut him down, but I know way back when I was a kid growing up, even in church, if you ask questions like about suicide or just things
that happened to you.
Yeah, you got shut down. I mean, I remember my sister had asked one of the youth pastors. She said, what are your thoughts about suicide? And we were very young, like we could have been no more than like in middle school, late elementary, and here the youth pastor's response was, easy, don't jump.
Wow.
And it's like when you have a kid that young asking you a question like that and you respond in that way, that doesn't encourage them to ever want to speak up again. And everybody laughed. Like a lot of the other kids and the other adults, they just all laughed. It really closed her in. It closed me in as well,
This reminds me of the first time that I went to a school, and I remember that was a moment I finally appreciate those who ask questions.
Yeah.
And I remember we were in the class and the lecturer was there. And I remember a student in the class asked a question. To me, it's a foolish question. To me, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
And the question that the child asked, I mean, even the other students were like, what kind of question? Why are you asking that? That's like such a... Anyway, the lecture was that's important. We're looking at the importance of parents, adults, entertaining foolish questions that we think is foolish. And once that lecturer entertained the question, and he just ignored all of us, snickering and wondering what kind of question.
Yeah.
And I remember the lecturer started explaining the answer to that one child who was persistent, still wanted to hear the answer.
Yeah.
Guess what happened after that? I realized the place was very quiet. And I had my head down. And something in me said, hold up your head and look around. When I look around, guess what I saw? Everybody else was writing down the same answer to that foolish question.
Right.
You see, how if we listen, that's why it's important for us as adults, as parents, to listen to that child, listen to what they're saying. Because remember, growing up, we really didn't understand everything.
Yeah.
That's why it's important to even encourage Eve raising a hand and to even ask those questions. That day my life changed. That was when Eve as a teacher realized that there is no foolish question. And no matter which child came in my class and tried to put down others for asking foolish, by the time I'm finished with them, they shut their mouth and respect each and every one.
Yeah. I think this kind of segues into what ends up happening to a lot of good kids who are shut down. As someone who can totally relate to this, is that because I know once I graduated from high school and went into college all on my own, everything that I had been buried inside just unleashed. Because they always say, you see the good girls gone bad, or the good kid went rebel, and and you just go wild because all this time you've had this pent up frustration. You never got a chance to express yourself, so you get very extreme when you finally get that piece of like freedom. You're like independence. Nobody's here around to judge me, and then you go crazy. They say a lot of pastor kids do that too, where because they're confined to this good role. Yes, like I'm the pastor's kid, or I'm a really good student, so I have to uphold this image that maybe there is some good there, but it's also not me. It's not 100% me, and I think that you smother the potential of who that person can be or that child can be. So then when they get that sense of freedom, now they just go into the extreme opposite direction and looking for who they are. And I think we can circumvent that by, as adults, not thinking we always have all the answers or we feel like we have to have all the answers. Because I think that's part of the reason why we get shut down, or we shut down kids, or why I've been shut down before as a child.
The type of question they ask us.
Yes, because you're immediately intimidated, like, why are you asking that? I don't know the answer.
And it's okay for that parent to say, I don't know.
Exactly. So I feel like parents put this pressure on themselves to be like, they have to have all the answers. And that doesn't help your kid, because they're going to grow up and do the same thing. They're going to be like, well, if I don't have all the answers, yeah, it's just going to create that perfectionism in the child.
You know what I love about that? It reminds me of a pressure cooker. Because remember, we were talking about why good child die inside. How are they dying inside?
Yeah.
It's almost like a pressure cooker. The fact that they're not getting the opportunity. Cause I remember I wanted to, remember I'm shy reserve and I wanted to, but as I say, in cases where I did speak up, I saw others speak out, I get shut down. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to say anything. But here's how they die inside. It's like a pressure cooker. Can you imagine you have a pressure cooker and there's no, what you call that thing at the top? That allows the pressure to be released.
Oh, the vent.
The vent.
Yeah.
Everyone, we all need moments to vent what's happening inside.
Yeah.
That's why it's very important we speak to someone. If we don't get a chance to speak to our family, our mother and father, maybe that's why they're speaking to their children, their furry friends at school. Who doesn't really know how to help them.
Exactly. May not be giving them good advice either.
Very good. So we need opportunities to vent. So watch this. You have all of this pressure because we're not giving it a chance to vent. And you see when that pressure builds up and it doesn't get a chance to release some of that pressure. That's why you said when you reach college, yes, and I really reached a point in my life that when I started venting all that was inside of me, a lot of persons were like, what's wrong with him? And it has nothing to do with them. But it's the years of those built up emotions that I always wanted to express and say to someone. But finally I stopped. But when I did, whoa, everybody had to run away from me.
So I think sometimes what could be challenging is, well, what's allowing your kid to express themselves versus them not disrespecting you? Because I think that's what ends up happening. A lot of parents may not want their kid to be like disagreeing with them for the fact that it may look like they're rebelling against you. But I think there's a difference between a child being disrespectful and just saying whatever comes on their mind versus them expressing their opinion and you as a parent making space for them to do that. What's the difference?
You know, when I became a teacher, that's something that I did a lot. I allowed my child to even tell me how much they hate me. My students, that is. Gave them the opportunity to, so watch this now. We have a lot of the students in my class. I taught mainly the ones at the lower end of the entire school for that matter. And those students are seen as disrespectful. Here's why they are seen as disrespectful. They speak their truth. They tell the teacher, so you can't teach none at all. They tell you exactly how they're real. However, here's one thing we had to address and fix in those kids. I allow them to tell me how much they hate me, but I then tell them it's not what you say, or how they say it. So the way in which they use to express themselves, people will say it's disrespectful. It's the truth. They're being real, but it's how they're saying it. So the moment we help them, give them that arena to speak their truth and tell me that, when they tell me that they didn't like me or hate me, then they have to answer why. They have to tell me why. So the moment we start creating that platform, no longer my students became disrespectful. Because at the end of the day, the ones who we think are disrespectful because they're really telling us the truth, but it's just how it comes out of their mouth.
And sometimes we just can't handle it.
Definitely.
Sometimes.
Definitely.
So I think there is a balance of keeping that boundary as an adult when you're allowing your kid or your student to speak to you. But I think the first step is letting down your ego, because I feel like that adult to child separation can make adults feel like this kid shouldn't be saying this to me. So I think the key for us as adults is creating that balance. I think because a lot of us weren't given that same courtesy of being heard, and when we were kids, it's easy to repeat that with the next generations.
Next generation, very true.
But I think what helps is, as an adult, is to know that you don't have to have all the answers. And the more that you're able to humble yourself and say, I don't really know the answer to that, but I'll think about it and I'll get back to you. Or even if it's just to listen to them, maybe they don't need a solution, or they don't need a certain specific wisdom. They just need someone to listen to them. I think that's going to help our kids become more expressive, and then we ourselves can be an example to them and how you express yourself. Because I really think part of it too that we'll take it as disrespect is because we're not even demonstrating to them how do you express yourself without being disrespectful.
Yeah.
A lot of adults don't even know how to do that. You know, so it's a learning experience for both the adult and the child, and this could be a very rich moment of experimenting with your younger siblings or younger family members or students that you work with, to be able to say, you know, I may not have all the answers, and what this child is saying could very well be true, because children think black and white for the most part, and they haven't grown enough to know how to express themselves in a way that's healthy. So for us as the adults, we need to be that example for them and saying, look, I know you're upset right now, and you know, I know that this isn't working out the way you want and you're frustrated. That's okay, but that's not going to fix it, or that's not going to help you moving forward. So here's how I would do this if I were you. You know, I think treating them like humans, like treat them how you want to be treated, how you would want somebody to be that listening ear for you and that voice of reason as well.
As you mentioned, treating them as humans. I remember helping this young man, and I was homeschooling him at one time during the pandemic, recent pandemic actually.
Yeah.
I remember the mother was there, the mother said, you know, it's amazing. It seems as if you talk to my son, which was like 8, 9 at the time. You spoke to him like he's a grown man.
Yeah.
I'm like, then isn't that how, well, not that's how you should speak to a young man, but I was like, then why not speak to him like a grown man?
Because he is going to be a grown man one day.
Very good. And I remember at one point, there was something she said to me that she should have said to him. And I said, why haven't you said this to him so he understand what happened in the family dynamics? And I remember she said he's not grown enough.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why she did ask that question, because that was when they may think that child is too young to understand the question that he asked about the young man that asked.
Yeah.
But you never know, the fact that they're asking those questions, why not tell them these things? Develop that trust in them, in you, that you can speak to them about anything. There's a time when I was teaching my students, because you're speaking about developing that trust. Sometimes you have to do it before things happen as well.
True.
Meaning, I remember I was teaching my class. I remember I'm a teacher and I should know what I should know and have all the formulas as a maths teacher, all of that. But one thing I do when I teach, I usually teach them 2 ways of getting to the same answer. I remember a child came up with a 3rd way this time to figure out. And wow, at that moment when I asked how did they get it, I remember telling that child, say, hey, I said to the entire class, students, we're now going to use this student's formula of working out this maths. Remember, I'm the teacher, I'm the one who should know everything, but yet I'm giving the child's interpretation or their way of doing it as the new way to do it. Mind you, a little later we proved that it didn't work out. But here's what I did. I'm developing confidence in that child to say, hey, I'm willing to listen to what you are saying. I'm willing to even take what you have said to me in place of what I think and I know to be right. I remember the things that I was teaching was right. But guess what? You see, that's what happens when those children realize that you're respecting them, you're listening to them, you're even willing to replace even my own right thoughts that I have for their way of looking at things. Those children, I'm pretty sure, whenever they get upset and I come in, they're really pretty sure to really understand what I'm going to say to them, because I gave them a chance to be themselves.
So, and I think with that being said, for my parting words, I would encourage anyone, any adult, teacher, whatever it may be, is just to remember you were a kid one time. And you also had thoughts, you had dreams, you had things you wanted to express. And if that wasn't something you were given, work on becoming that for the next generation. Because these kids are, these good kids that everyone says are quiet, they stay to themselves, they are dying inside. And it may be, a lot of parents get pride out of their children being well behaved and good and perfect and pristine and polished, but nothing wrong with wanting that for your children, but also remember they're human and they also have needs, they also have they go through depressing times, they have thoughts, and they have a need for someone to hear them and understand them apart from the perfection or the image that they're putting on out there. So I think the quicker we're able to create that for our children, the easier it's going to be for them in the future to not be hard on themselves, and they can be real with who they are, and therefore draw and attract the people that would love them for who they are and not for some idealized version of them. So remember, you were a kid one time.
In closing as well, let's answer the question that I started with. So remember, I still spoke to you about the prodigal son. We had two sons, one that spoke his mind. At the end of the day, the good one can be sometimes, here's the point, the one that really expressed themselves.
Yeah.
Mom, that boy that is really being rough on you, Mom, that's that boy that speaks his truth to you, just remember that he could be the good son. Because if you really listen to what they're saying to you, maybe they're telling the truth. Maybe, not all the time, but maybe they're telling the truth. So at the end of the day, we're trying to say that some of these children that we have that are good, that are decent, that don't curse, that don't speak against what we see or try to come against what we're saying to them, maybe deep down we're not creating that avenue for them to really express themselves and say, Mom and Dad, I really don't like you. You see, the moment we can allow our child to really express themselves, then you ask this question, sit down, my son or daughter, I need to know why you really don't like me.
And so that was really good. I want to recommend a movie. It's called The Good Son. And I think, yes, but it plays into the psychology of how parents will see a good kid versus the not so good kid. It's such a good movie, so I highly recommend it. Yeah. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you guys in the next one, which is going to be on...
It's in March.
In March, yes.
We have one plan.
We have one plan for March. I know we've kind of... anyway.
That's quite okay.
Yeah, so please feel free to leave your comments, subscribe if this is your first time watching, give us a thumbs up, and we hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day or evening.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.